Welcome to the Called Sister podcast. Today, I am super excited to have my friend Sara Ahlstrom with me. I'm just noticing I tend to interview Sarahs. I'm Sara, and here's my second Sarah, also spelled differently, though. It's kind of fun. Sarah Hiss was spelled differently. Sara Ahlstrom spelled differently. So it's kind of fun. Anyway, I'm excited to have her here with me today. We'll find out where she served and when in just a minute. I'm also excited to have my daughter here in cardboard cutout form. She's currently serving in the Paris, France mission. And so it's cool. I'm joined today by two guests, one who won't be very vocal and one hopefully who will be. So just a reminder, if you are a returned sister missionary, or if you're thinking about going on a mission, or if you're a woman who needs to be uplifted and wants to hear stories of other women who have been there, done that, or been through some things, then listen up, share away. Let's get this podcast out far and wide so that people can be uplifted and feel the spirit throughout the week. That is our goal. So, without further ado, Sara, thank you so much for coming, for being here today. Where did you serve and when?
Thank you for the invite. I served in the Cherry Hill, New Jersey mission, New Jersey Cherry Hill, and I was there from June of 2000 to December of 2001.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
Had you always wanted to serve a mission?
No, I mean, all my older brothers served. I have four older brothers. I had no, one of my older sisters served. So it was not something that was like new to me.
Okay.
Um, but it wasn't until my senior year of high school that I was like, yeah, I'm going to go on a mission because I knew I was going to go off to school and go have a career and do all the things I want to do. But I, I was at a place where I was like, I want to figure out the spiritual side of me, and I was like, a mission's going to teach me that. And I would tell people, I went to BYU, and I remember my second year I was an RA, and I would tell, I was telling guys like, I mean, I didn't date a lot, so I was, in the dorms, the guys that were not freshmen were, return missionaries, and I would be telling them how I was going to go on a mission. And one guy actually told me, "Oh, don't tell guys that, they won't want to ask you out." I was like, "Peace out, boy,"
Oh
because
my gosh.
yeah, the kind of guy I want to be with would be cool with that. So
Absolutely. So you
yeah,
went back
so
when you had to be 21.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And the guys who were freshmen when I was a freshman, they were kind of piloting the email thing, but when I was out, it was gone. So we were still writing letters. And I remember like my hand being a little cramped on Mondays, P day, just like, whew. But it's funny as I remember being very like, okay, I'm gonna get this binder, and it's gonna be and I'll give it to my mom, and then I'll write all my letters home on this like notebook paper that she can save for later. And that was going to be my journal, and being kind of meticulous about how I was going to be a missionary. And then I remember, being out in the field and being kind of like, okay, I know the little white Bible. I did the MTC thing, and now I want to know how it's actually applied on the mission, because I was like, I know that missionaries are not like completely, by the book all the time. I want to know how it's applied, and kind of tried to open my mind to how each, mission or each missionary, used the rule book. And it was interesting to see how, my trainer did things one way, and I trained a different way, and other missionary companions that I had did things differently. And it was interesting to see what rules were really important to individual missionaries, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But my biggest takeaway was, and I tell this to my nieces and nephews, I'm like, look for ways to follow the rules, because you never know. Um, you don't know. Like, they're there for a reason, to keep you safe, to um, make things easier. And there were things like, you go out and tracked, and it'll be like, oh, well, we just had a massive snowstorm, so we're not allowed to use our cars. So my companion and I would be like, okay, well, we're putting on snow boots, and we're gonna go knock on doors until it's too cold. You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
if it's gonna rain, you bring an umbrella. Like, you just find ways to keep the rules.
Yeah.
And there was one thing where the reason I say that is because I had an experience where that I was only out for one Christmas, and growing up with, five other missionaries, I knew you get the Christmas phone call and you get the Mother's Day phone call.
Hmm.
So my first phone call home was my Christmas, and that year, the leaders of the church had said that they wanted to encourage us to speak for a few minutes. And my mission president was saying, I'm not going to reinterpret what they say. They said minutes, not hours. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, so I think I probably was on the phone for like 45 minutes, And and I had a companion who was going home, and like, you got to take care of business and things, and it was longer than 45 minutes, And so we didn't think anything about it, and we had gone to dinner at a member's home, a part member family, and they had a couple of missionaries out. And the dad, who was not the member, asked us how long we had spoken. And I said, oh, 45, I don't know, my friend, my companion, like, oh, And he didn't say anything and whatever. And they had had an agreement in their family where the kids couldn't be baptized until they were like 16.
Okay.
And anyways, so then, go on with the mission, this and that. I think I came back. It was either when I came back to that area at the end of my mission, or it was on the next transfer. I can't remember. My companion at the time had gone home. And at one point, his wife was saying how she's a good, awesome woman, and she was talking in Relief Society about how hard it can be to do the missionary work in her own home when there are things that are tricky to follow. For example, one of her children, the mission president, chose to interpret it as 5 minutes. And so they only got to talk to her, or whatever. I don't know if it was the boy or the girl, but they only got to talk for 5 minutes. And that was really hard for the dad. So here we were saying, oh, yeah, we talked for 40 minutes. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
felt very like, oh, it was something so small. But it's one of those things where it's like, you just don't always know.
Yeah.
Like you come to the street and you look for cars and you cross, right? Even if it's against the light or something. And you don't know like what could be coming in another direction, or who saw you, or who, I feel like there's so many different um, consequences that we don't see,
Yeah.
that even something simple, it's like just find a way to follow the rules and don't ask questions. Just do it. It's not because you don't have the freedom. It's not because they want control. It's not whatever, and so it's I always encourage the new missionaries, just like look for ways to follow the rules, because
Right.
you just have no idea how it could affect you, good or bad. So
Right. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
It's it's funny that you bring that up because I feel like there tends to be kind of extremes. Like I know that in some missions, it's like how have they said it? I know in the Morristown mission, kind of depending on who the mission president was at the time, it was like either like exact obedience, and like the exact would like cause the missionaries, at least the sister missionaries, to like have ulcers and be sick because maybe they fell asleep on their knees praying or something, and then they weren't awake, or whatever the thing was. And then there was also the other swing, and that seemed to be more elders who were just like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. So I find that interesting. Um, had you always been somebody who followed rules? Like were rules kind of, or being obedient, was that kind of something that was important to you before the mission?
Yeah, for sure, but at the same time, like I think anyone who knows me is like, I'm often late. So it's not like I'm like super, I mean, I was late to this call, let's be honest, but like, but yeah, I don't think you should be rigid. I definitely think you
Mm,
have to have like uh there's got to be room for the spirit, and I'll give you a great example.
good.
Okay, so the second to last transfer of my mission was a Tuesday. It was beautiful, blue sky. And we were making phone calls in Manahawkin, which is on the shore, and just setting up appointments. We talked to um, a member, and she said, um, terrorist airplanes have hit the World Trade Center. And we were like, what?
Mm.
Terrorist airplanes? Like, how did our military let them through? What is a
Yeah.
terrorist airplane? And we made some other phone calls. It was really weird. We did not have, the people that were on cell phones. There was this weird buzzing noise when we tried to call them that we didn't understand was just for cell phones later. But we go to start out on the day, and somebody walking down the street, I think he was some kind of like utilities person, I don't know. He said to us, figures today would be 911. And we were like, oh, this is going to be different. We didn't know what was happening really. The
Yeah.
first door we knocked on, the television was right in front of us, and we could see what was happening. And we were like, oh. And we were like, hi, we're here to share a message about Jesus Christ. And he was like, yeah, okay, okay. And we started with the first discussion, as you always do, because there was
Yeah.
no come follow me yet. It was just a rumor that that was being written, you know?
Right.
And we're reading, and we're going through the first session about Joseph Smith, and it was just like, this does not feel appropriate. Like, it just felt like it fell flat. You know, I was like, this is not what we need to be sharing today. And so we switched to just reading scriptures with people, singing hymns, praying. There were a lot of people who were, calling to get their kids out of school, just all kinds of stuff. And this was not like we weren't anywhere where we could actually see the buildings. Like I said, we were on the shore, and anyways, so it was a strange time. But I think
Yeah.
in situations like that, like you got to go with the spirit, and I love the approach of come follow me now, because I feel like it is more that way,
Hmm.
and so it's great to see the church. I think what they put out is what's needed at the time. They
Hmm.
see how it goes, they test, they evolve, and there's been so many amazing changes with the missionary program, and sisters going younger, and having, what do they call it, like the sisters can be
Oh,
like
sister training leaders.
training, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like
Amazing.
ZLs, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really cool. I'm a big fan of encouraging everyone to go on a mission, but especially girls, because you know it's something that's for you. Like, I feel like my mission taught me how to be a member.
Mm.
I remember going to the MTC and being like, you do those little like role play prompts, and it
Hmm.
would be like, testify about this principle, and I'd be like, I believe that this is true, because that's all I could say. I couldn't say I
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
and I would say that's where I'm at. I'm here to learn, and I had a moment where I was very like, you get to that point in the MTC where you're just like stressed and tired, and like, feeling the spirit, and had one of those moments where I was like, I don't know if I know, and all this stuff. I can't say I know, and I had a district leader that was really cool, and we were doing the role play, and he was like, I know, you know. And I remember kind of that night thinking back about all the times I'd had spiritual experiences, like at girls' camp, testimony meetings and firesides and things like that. And I was like, yeah, you know what? All of those things together help me to know that I know. And from then on, it's been like, yeah, those are the things, those are the ways that every little thing that builds your testimony is how you can know. And you can have a testimony of tithing, but maybe not so much testimony of, I don't know, whatever. But you work on those pieces,
Hmm.
and so for me, like, my mission helped me kind of really focus on, like, how I feel the spirit, how I get answers, and the importance of getting to know your neighbors so that you can be a good example and a friend, and you have that network that you can count on, and not so that you know can refer somebody to the missionaries, but that you're actually a living example of being a follower of Jesus Christ, and just, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just feel like it taught me how to be a member. I know one other thing. I just keep going here, but
It's fun to talk about your mission, isn't it? We just don't
yeah,
get that opportunity. And all of a
we
sudden it's like,
do.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I gotta talk about my mission. This is so cool.
Yeah, I remember thinking that my mission taught me the the why, the so what, like I
Mm.
remember wanting to go through the discussions before I got out on my mission, and I was reading through the first one with my dad, and I was just like, we grew up learning all of the facts and details. Like I could tell you that Joseph Smith was the first prophet and that he saw God and he translated the Book of Mormon and all that kind of stuff. But until my mission, until going through the discussions, I kind of didn't know why that was important, like why that
Mm.
was a big deal, and that
Yeah.
he translated it and didn't write it, and that, like just it to me, it was like it was about the so what, why it everything that we believe is how it's different than
Mm.
what so many other religions and cultures believe, and the fact that it was restored, the
Yeah.
fact that it was, the original way that the church was run throughout time and history, like that it wasn't that he started it, and
Yeah.
just all that kind of stuff that hadn't really clicked yet. So anyways, so
That's so cool. No, you said so many
yeah.
cool things. One, it was kind of fun because my friend Sarah, her and I always would joke about we met each other a long time ago when I lived in Utah. And when the new, like the Preach My Gospel came out, and they're like, now we're teaching by the Spirit, we looked at each other like, now? Like we always have. And so it's funny that you brought that up too, that it's more spirit directed. Um,
Yeah.
and her and I had a big conversation. I don't know if you've heard that podcast, but it's kind of cool. You may enjoy it. We talked a lot about how the purpose of learning all that was so that you then could teach by the Spirit. The more that we know, the more we can draw. And I know my husband and I, just on Sunday there was no Sunday school teacher, and so everybody was sitting there kind of like, I don't know what to do. And so we just got up and taught. Like we understand the principles, we know how to look for "Come Follow Me," we know how to read scriptures. Like it wasn't, like we got paid the same whether we sat in the audience or got up. And
Yeah.
so it was cool just being able to act on those principles. And I think that they started maybe teaching it different, that let's let's get the information, but then let's teach, kind of the principle and the idea and not be quite so rigid, like you said earlier. So that was cool that you brought that up. And then you also talked about how it helped you to learn how you feel. I said how you feel the Spirit. But like, are you willing to share like how you feel? Like, do you think the Spirit? Do you feel it? Do you see it? Like,
Um,
how do you get your information or your revelation?
yeah. I have noticed over the years that sometimes it's just a thought that pops into my head, and other times it's sometimes it's a nudge that I
Mm.
don't want to pay attention to. And other times it's that fiery, like, yeah, that feeling that just moves you,
Yeah.
whether it's to tears or to action.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I work in the temple, and it's nothing that was ever on my radar because I was like, that's what you do when you're old and retired.
Where do you,
And
what temple do you work at?
Jordan River.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so I had been on the state council as the primary president, and we were hearing about, okay, so the Taylorsville Temple open, and the Tooele Temple open, and Salt Lake is my temple district, but of course it's closed. And we just kept hearing that, like, we're going to need more workers, we're going to need more work, and I just kind of kept feeling that nudge.
Mm.
And even though in my head the thoughts are just thoughts, like there's no emotion to it, it's just a thought.
Hmm.
When I talk about it, I like to say that the thought is my pioneer ancestors, like giving me crap for my whiny complaints, like I'm single, I don't even have pets, like, I work for myself and remotely and everything, like, and I would be like, oh, I just don't have time, I'm trying to get this business going. And then it was like, yeah, you don't have time, you of all people with all the freedom, yeah, you have time, or like, oh, but my feet hurt if I stand too long. And I was like, 80-year-old women are doing this, zip it, like I'm like, oh, but this will be so hard. I'm like, here comes the pioneer. Like, I don't, obviously, like, that's not how it works, but in my head, like, it's like they're saying to me, "Oh my gosh, you're whining so much. Stop." Like, yeah, because it was really hard when I had to, real easy when I had to push my hand cart across the desert and like bury people I loved, and you know what I mean? Like, just I just was like, I need to put this in perspective and be like, yeah, it's gonna be fine. So I remember, I went to get my to get set apart, and I just remember being just like, I'm so like crying, not because it was spiritual, because I was like, how in the heck am I going to make this work? And because it was so many hours, and I just thought, oh my gosh. And then the next day was my first shift, and I went down and I could hear the women singing before the prep meeting, and I just was like, oh, that's so beautiful, it's so heavenly, oh, that's so peaceful. And at the time our shift was doing like everyone would bring kind of potluck snacks and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be fine. There's food, like just silly things like that. And it's funny how like now I can't imagine not doing it throughout the week.
Mm.
At first I was like, that's so many hours. That's like 6 hours out of my day once a week. And now it's like, oh, it's so nice. It's peaceful. And it was another way to be like, oh, this is what we do, like the back end of the temple when you're not a patron. And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
I felt like a new member, because I was like, oh, I didn't know how to do this and that. But I feel it's one of those analogies, in seminary where they're like, you put the rocks in first, the important things,
Hmm.
and the sand.
Yeah.
And I feel that way. I feel like, he knew I needed this, and that was that nudge. And all my, human whining and complaints and stuff, and the thoughts that came to me peacefully, not with attitude, but just to be like, let's look at this in perspective.
Yeah.
And anyways, so yeah, I feel like those are some of the ways that I feel the spirit. And
That's cool. So kind of all of the ways, which I think we all feel it all of the ways, but we so often say, how do I feel the spirit? And then we read scriptures that say, didn't I speak it in your mind? And didn't you see the fruits of this? And didn't, so I think my husband and I teach this a lot in Institute, how it's not just like a burning in your bosom. And it was so funny. I can't remember who said it, and we keep trying to remember who, but one of our students somewhere was like, I thought that was your butt. So your butt burns. And we were like, that would be annoying, like, but, and I know growing up for me, like people would say, I feel the spirit, and then they would cry. And I wasn't much of a crier. So it was like, I guess I'm never feeling it, but I could feel it like in my stomach. Like I have such a crazy, intense sensation, like in my belly.
yeah,
And so that's how I feel. But then also it's those thoughts, like you said, I love that you said it's a nudge. And sometimes you're moved to tears and sometimes you're moved to action. That's, I mean, action is one of the ways that I feel things. It's almost like I find myself doing something before I've had a chance for it to like go through my brain and figure it out. I'm kind of just like acting already. So that's really cool that you said that. So I'm curious then, thank you for sharing all of that and that you work in the temple. One of my best friends, Shannon, actually, you saw the podcast with her. One of them with her, she actually works in the temple as well. So she calls me and she's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I didn't even know what I didn't know. And I was able to hear this way. And it's just beautiful. I think when you're there so much, you just get to hear things that you don't when you go once every so often. Like our closest temple right now is 2.5 hours away. I think that's the closest one, or three and a half. So we can go south for about 3 hours, or we can go north for about 3.5, or like 5 hours. It just depends on traffic and, Florida down however we go. But so when we're there, we don't get to, you do as much as you can, but it's like a big event, it's not down the street. So I,
yeah.
Shannon tells me all the time, I was able just to sit in there and listen. And because you hear it so much, you can hear it differently. And also, I think you can probably tune out, it's probably both. But I wanted to ask you, how do you feel, or do you feel, I guess is a better way to put it, that the mission prepared you for this time in your life?
Um, I'd have to say yes, just because it solidified my testimony, and I think that um, through all the times that I've had like other growing phases and stressful times and whatever, I can look back at that and go, you know, um, like it's true, and because I had that foundation that I solidified on my mission, um, even when I'm going through hard times, I can say like it's gonna work out, it's gonna be okay. And um, there were times on my mission where, well, I've always been like emotional, and I thought, oh, I'm just sensitive, I'm just, you know, whatever, or I'm insecure, or
Mm.
then it was I'm introverted, so that's why I'm whatever, like you know, just fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But but
Almost
I
like
went,
trying to find excuses for why you were the
yeah,
way you were instead of just this, it's okay.
explanations,
Yeah.
yeah, explanations. And I went through some really trying times where like I I lived in Prague for 5 months, and my goal was to stay there at least a year. And it was a stressful time, um, and I was struggling to find the money to be able to stay. And and I just remember being like, keep pushing your handcart, like, you know, like the pioneers, they couldn't quit. They couldn't just turn around and be like, I'm done. I'm going back. Like, you know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
was going to be just as hard to go back as if they kept going forward. And I just kept remember thinking, keep moving your handcart, keep pushing the handcart. And and I got home from that, and I was really bummed that I had to leave. I just was so frustrated that the path hadn't opened up for me the way I wanted it to.
Hmm.
And I've been back for 11 years, and I went through a really uh, beautiful but hard relationship, and was stressed out so much to the point where I went and spoke with a doctor, and was explaining, you know, like what's going on, and she just basically was like, you know, you can't will yourself to be happy. Sometimes, as my bishop put it, you know, he's like, maybe you should check into medication. And I was like, oh, but you know, people medicate so easily. They want to numb the pain. They don't want to do the work and figure out what's going on. And I was doing everything to be like, you know, if I'm stressed out, then I need to look at how much I'm sleeping, and what have I been eating lately, and have I gone out and connected with anybody? Have I done any service? How have I connected spiritually? When was the last time I exercised? I would kind of go through this whole list of, you know, tools that I had. And
Hmm.
I remember um, just like one day it just wasn't working. And so I decided to take his advice and go talk to a doctor. And I don't know if I just said this or not, but he said medication can be like lifting the fog so that you
Hmm.
can think through the
Right.
situation, right? And so when I talked to my doctor, and she said, you know, you can't will yourself to be happy. If the chemicals are not, you know, there, then, you know. And so because of all those hard times, I found out that I have anxiety. And when I talked to my doctor and I would tell her about my youth, and she's like, sounds like you've had it your whole life and maybe still will. And she's like, and that's okay, because, you know, when you were a kid, we didn't have anything but Prozac, and we wouldn't have given it to kids, you know? And so it made me kind of look back on my life and be like, oh my gosh, like that's why this and this and this. And that's, and like to not be as hard on myself. And so basically what I'm talking about as far as with my mission is that when I look back at the times on my mission where I was like, I'm the worst trainer, I'm horrible, I'm this and that,
Mm.
beating myself up. And it was like, you know, trying to be good, trying to follow the rules and everything. Um, but feeling like I was falling short. It was like,
Hmm.
you know, there's other things. There's other tools I didn't have at the time. There were, you know, and medication I didn't think about and know about, and all this kind of stuff. And so it just felt very like um, this piece that had been missing. And I guess for me, those times in your life when you look back and you see the hard time, and that you pushed through and that you kept going, and it strengthens you and it builds you, and it gives you confidence. And anyway, so that's another reason why I would say for people to go on missions is that you learn so much about yourself, you get opportunities to grow and learn and become a stronger person. And anyway, so I know I've probably like gone off on so many tangents and not answered the questions exactly, um, but to me that was one of the biggest takeaways, was learning how to get through hard things and come out the other end and be like, I'm stronger, I'm a better person because of this. And yeah, anyways.
I love that you said that because it's actually It's fun. It's one of my favorite things to teach about too. There's not necessarily somewhere where it says this exactly, but I have a belief that one of the reasons that we're here on earth is to see our own character. I like to compare it to my own children. I know if I offer money for a chore, I know which kid will be like, absolutely. I know if I offer, you know, whatever, like I know which kids are going to say, yeah, that's what I want. And other kids are going to be like, I don't even care. And it's not because I'm a mind reader, but it's because I know them so well. I know what they will do. And I feel like that's how Heavenly Father is with us. And that as we're here on earth, which is what I heard you say, you get to learn essentially how you'll react or what you'll do in these situations. And so I think I totally agree with the mission. Like it is I remember before I went out, the only thing people say was, oh, it's just going to be the best. And so when it wasn't the best, and maybe this is how you felt too, when you're like, I was a lousy trainer, I felt like I wasn't doing things right. It was like, shoot, I must be doing something wrong because it isn't the best. Like it's horrible and I'm really low and it's super hard and I'm frumpy and nothing fits and I'm tired and I'm hungry and like so like what the heck is wrong with me? But then I began to discover that the highs were as big as the lows were, and that I up to that point it was the most significant thing that I had done. And I think that that is what people mean, looking back. I've been home. I mean, you've been home more than 20 years. I've been home for more than 20 years. It's so looking back, it's easy to kind of see like the highlights. And then I'll read through my journal entries and I'm like, holy cow, yeah, that so much of it was really, really hard. But we both got to prove it to ourselves that we were going to stick it out, and I know that's not right for everybody. Some people, mental illnesses and stuff show up so big on the mission that they need to go home and they need to get help. And that's fine too. We're all in our own journey. And I actually just spoke with the most recent podcast. Her name was Kalia, or is still Kalia, but that's who I spoke to. And she came home a couple months early from her 18-month mission. And we were talking about how there's no obligation at all for girls. We go 100% because we want to. And I love in the mission call, it says it's anticipated that you serve for this amount of time. And I think we put a timeline on, well, if I do it this much, then it's acceptable. But God tells us in our hearts when it's acceptable. So, yeah, but I love that you pointed out that we get to really see kind of what we'll do in those circumstances and how much stronger we are than we ever thought in the first place. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it helps build those skills. It helps
Yeah.
build that understanding and confidence in yourself. But yeah, I mean, I know, and I think, God can give you those opportunities in a lot of ways, like going
Mm.
off to college, going to the military, just going out and working. That's that first time where you're leaving the nest and becoming an adult. And I just think that a mission is unique. It's a
Yeah.
unique way to do that, to build
Yeah.
those skills and that experience, because it's the only time in your life that you're going to be working like full time with the Savior. And the bishop who sent me off told me that, and he was like, so, whatever it is you want to change about yourself, whatever skills you want to develop, like this is your, not like you can't keep growing and learning
Hmm.
about it, but this is a unique time capsule where you get to do that with him.
Yeah, it really is. And like again with Kayla, yeah, she has just been home a couple weeks and she's like, I had no idea how hard it would be to keep the spirit with me all the time, just with everyday life. You don't realize how immersed you are in it until you're not in it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, and she's like, yeah, it's just a lot more work because you have everything else, right? You have life and school and friends and dating and family and life pressures where in the mission you really don't. You just get to focus on Jesus and it's pretty cool. One of my guests, Vanessa, said after we went off the recording, and I'm curious if you had a feeling like this. I didn't, so I was surprised when she said it, and I posted it, and the comments were like, "Yeah, I totally felt this way." So I'm curious how you feel. She said when she was on the plane ride home from her mission, she thought, "Did this even happen? My family wasn't there. My friends weren't there. Nobody I know experienced any of what I went through. like was kind of almost like, was this just a dream? She said it felt very, very strange. Did you have a feeling like that at all?
No, I think for me, the closest thing to that was coming back to BYU. And so I came home in December, went right back to school in January. And that following September, the first anniversary, um, I was very much like, okay, what are we doing to honor this? Like, where's all of the like, is school going to be canceled today? Like,
Oh yeah.
and it was like they had in the Daily Universe, they had printed stories of people who had been there or been affected by it and stuff. But that was really it. And I just remember
Mm,
being like, was like everyone's going on with their lives. Like, how are we not commemorating this? And I went to the LRC in the library and I just sat there and watched like news story after news story after news story that I wasn't really allowed to watch while I was there. And I just sat there and just cried the whole time because that's the only time where I felt like nobody else experienced this that I'm around,
yeah.
you know. But like other than that, like um I didn't feel that way because I'd had so many other missionaries in my family that had
Okay.
gone. So it felt like just a part of how things work and how you do
Okay.
things.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, that's interesting though that you bring that up. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you're talking about 9/11. So I lived in Arizona. My husband and I and our brand new baby were in Arizona at the time, and it was kind of weird, and the day was weird, and I was separated from it enough, but also it was weird. I think the whole world felt weird. And then when we moved to New York, we moved there in July. So we moved to Jersey in January, and then moved to New York in July that same year. And I remember like everybody knew somebody. We lived in Rockland County, and so many like we knew firefighters who were like, "Yeah, I worked for 4 days straight and came home to sleep, and I couldn't sleep, so I just drove back up." Or like somebody's uncle or grandfather was there, and like every town everywhere had these not celebrations, but kind of like memorials, and there were empty chairs for everybody in that town who had given their life, and it was so much more real then. And I had such a different appreciation knowing my friends' relatives were in that, or my friends had participated in that. And so that's interesting. That would have been hard because I experienced it reverse,
Mhm.
where I knew it was a big deal because of course it was a big deal, but I didn't feel anything because I didn't really know anybody. And then being there all those years later, it was like, oh my gosh, this wasn't just something that I saw on the news. Like these people were affected and they all had stories after stories. So I bet that would have been really, really weird. Like, how does nobody even, why are you just being normal? Like, what's wrong with you? This is
Yeah.
so wrong.
Yeah. And it's wild to think that there are adults out there who weren't even born when it happened. So, but yeah, and it's funny. Like, so in New Jersey, they decorate for Halloween in September.
Hmm.
And I mean, all out, like
Yeah. Like
yards in front,
crazy.
witches face planted into
Really,
buildings,
let's be
and
honest. It starts in
trees.
like August. Like the second kids go back to school, it's like Halloween.
That's so funny. But so then that happens, and then within a week it was like flags everywhere, and so it
Yeah.
was like, which holiday? But then I mean there were like flags on the pizza boxes. My
Yeah.
favorite saying was these colors don't run. And
Mm,
um people so like because I was far enough away, I don't even know how far Manahawkin is from New York, but um we were in a place where people were not regularly commuting. When
okay.
I went back to Princeton, my last 6 weeks, I was in
Oh,
Princeton,
yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was where everyone went to New York, and that's where a lot of members had been
That
affected.
I think that's part
Yeah,
of the Morristown mission, I
it probably is
think.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was so interesting. So there was this one beautiful moment where so like I said, we had spent the day that it happened just trying to be helpful because we were like, okay, we're good. Nothing, we don't, the sky's not falling. Like, if we're in big trouble, the church is going to yank us out. Like, we just have
Right. Yeah.
confidence of that. So we went about seeing how we could help. And
Can I just like really
yeah,
quick, you make me think of that conference talk where I don't remember who it was. One of the apostles' daughters or 70s daughters went to go visit somebody and she was crying and she was going to be homeless and she lost her job. And the daughter started pulling up scriptures and was like, wait a minute, no, that's not what we need to do. We just need to pray. Like that's so I love that that's what you did, that you felt like you were trying to do the missionary work, in air quotes of like teach, but then you were like, these people just need love, man. They just, if they need to be prayed for it, they need to be. Anyways, I love that you did that. Go ahead. Sorry. I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. And I may have called it "Come Follow Me" earlier, but it was "Preach My Gospel" I was talking about. You're
That's
right.
okay.
Anyways, so yeah, we just kind of tried to figure out how we could help, and then it was so like I want to say like a week later, it might have been a month after, I can't remember. There, like the little community we were in had sort of like a community prayer meeting, and my companion and I came to this park from one direction, and our district leader and his companion had come from another, and the community was passing out white candles, and the elders were walking around and lighting everybody's candle. And it just was this like magical moment for me where it was like, that's what this whole mission is about, is
Hmm.
bringing this light of Christ to everyone of all different races and colors and beliefs and everything, and coming together as a community. And there were plenty of people who, like, there was one guy who had hung out his American flag, and we came up, and this was like within weeks after it had happened, and we came to knock on the door, and he was like, it's people like you pushing your beliefs on other people that make things like this happen, and
Hmm.
there was a little bit of fear and tension, obviously, because we didn't know what else was going to happen, and and so there was a great like coming together of a bunch of people, but there were always a few that were like, you know, turned that fear into anger, and but for the most part, it was really cool to see everybody kind of coming together. And again, as missionaries, you're not supposed to look at media and stuff, but I was like, whatever, this is different. Like every pizzeria, I was like, what's the TV? I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Newspapers on the front step, I'm like kicking over to see what the headline is. Like I was like, no, this is different.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah. It's not just regular news.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So but there was trying to think. Oh, this is another a big thing from that time. So like I said, it was a transfer day, right? So we automatically were going to be having um I can't even remember anymore, but like a zone conference or something, like every transfer or something. I feel like you had that. And it also happened to be when there was going to be a regularly scheduled Relief Society broadcast and a regularly scheduled conference. And there was going to be our mission had, I think we had done like a sisters conference. So that was already scheduled. And then on top of that, the church did a memorial like so many did, and broadcasted it. And I just felt like even though these horrible things happened, um, there were so many things in place already that gave us this extra like comfort and peace from the church and from God. And there was all these stories about how missionaries woke up late, and people had gotten jobs and left that building, a month before or something, or
Hmm.
went downstairs to get a candy bar at 8 in the morning. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
little
Hmm.
things that were kind of like God helping soften the blow.
Hmm.
Um, and the scripture that we would share with people was when I think it's Alma and Amulek, and they're watching the people be destroyed by fire, and they want to reach out and stop it, and they're like, we can't do that because we're feeling constrained by the Spirit, and that God lets these horrible things happen so that He can judge the wicked, or
Hmm.
something like that. Like it was something like that somehow fit that moment, and just felt like a good, like the only thing we could say, right? Like
Right.
there is a God. He does love us. Why does He allow bad things to happen to good people? You know.
Yeah, that was pretty in your face right then, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it just felt like there were lots of little things that were kind of already in place for us to kind of help support us and help us to, have that extra spiritual boost and comfort, um and anyways, so it was just one of those things where, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just it brought people together. It made so many things that are frivolous kind of slip away
Yeah.
and make you focus on why you're really there and what's important in life and seeing people come together in the community. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, my last area, I went back to Princeton, and that was where the anthrax was going through the Princeton post office. And so I was like, I'm sending things home. Is this gonna like,
Yeah.
get
Scary. Yeah.
contaminated? And um, funny how little things can make you freak out, but then you're like, no, like it's gonna be fine. Like the gospel is true, and God's got us, and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
That's crazy. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I love hearing the tender stories. So as we wrap up, I just want to ask one last question. What would you say to anyone, either who is considering serving a mission or maybe even somebody who has returned home from serving a mission? Is there anything you'd love to say to her?
Um, yeah, I think you definitely have to pray about opportunities in your life, whether it's a mission or not, and go with that feeling. Um, I would say, I mean, my having been, I'm like just go. Like just go. Even if you're kind of like, I don't feel strongly one way or the other. Um, it's such a great experience and such a great way to start off your adult life.
Hmm.
Um, and and don't worry about things like if anybody ever says to you as a girl, like, oh well, you don't have to go and it's more important to be a wife and a mom, or something like along those lines. Like, yes, and I've never been married, so like, I it is it like the goal is to be a wife and a mother, and those are beautiful, wonderful, important things. But a mission is not like a mutually exclusive thing. Like it will
Right.
help you be a strong individual so that you
Hmm.
can be a good employee, a good mother, a good wife. Like it's one of those things that will just be with you for the rest of your life and be a part of who you are. So don't ever hear anything that's dismissive and think that it somehow keeps you from doing the things you want to do in the rest of your life. It can only aid you, in my opinion.
Awesome. That seems to be the the consensus, I think, in everyone that I've talked to is just go. Just go. If it's even a thought or a nudge or something that flutters through your brain, like at least really fully consider it. Going on a mission was not anything I ever thought about not thinking about. Like it was so far from my brain. So when the idea came to me, I was almost like, what? Who said that? Like that's weird.
Yeah.
So and yeah, I feel the same way. I'm grateful every day that I served my mission. It was just incredible. And then one other thing I like to offer, and I've started offering my past few episodes, is would you like to share your testimony about anything with us?
Interesting. Um, so other than what I've already said, which is definitely a part of my testimony, I would say that um, I believe that God really knows who we are and that He really cares um, about us becoming our happiest, most productive, beautiful, talented selves that we can possibly be. I think that He has a clear view of what that is, and that we get a chance to learn and develop that here. And and I am super grateful for the organization of the church. I love that our leaders are these good men and women who have been trained throughout the years and have great, amazing life experiences that have prepared them for where they ended up being.
Hmm.
That it wasn't something that they desired
Yeah.
and were trying to be, and that they are examples of Christ-like, compassionate, beautiful peacemakers, and that they are intelligent and accomplished and um, great examples of especially what men can be and
Hmm.
should be, and that the structure of the church is actually something that allows us to do more and be more rather than confines us and keeps
Yeah.
us tethered and held back in any way. Um, and to me, that's all evidence that the gospel is true because um, God wants us to be more, and He's given us the way and the examples to do that. And um, and I think you keep trying, you keep doing your part, you keep being your best self that you can every minute of the day. And when you have a bad day, you pick up and you keep going.
Hmm.
And God meets you where you are, and He helps you, even if you have to take several steps back. He will walk with you forward again. And so don't give up. Know that you have worth, that you are important, and that you matter. And things will get easier and they'll get better. And there you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for joining me today. I love hearing the stories of missions and missionary work. And it's so fun because I feel like whenever I talk to somebody ahead of time and, say, "Hey, do you want to be on my podcast?" They're like, "Yeah, I don't really know if I have much to say." And it's like so easy to talk about your mission. All of a sudden it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, and this and this and this and this and this." And it's so fun to hear everybody's experiences. And I don't think anybody said that their mission was super duper easy or anything like that, but they all said that it was absolutely worth it. And so I love hearing your testimony, and I love the stories that you shared. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming on today, Sarah, and for doing this with me. And I never thought I would say stuff like this on my podcast, but if you liked it, leave us a comment, share with somebody. If you have any questions for Sarah, for myself, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. We want to get this out to as many girls as we can to help to uplift them and to give them the strength. So again, Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time on the next episode. So have a really good day. We'll see you.